Hello, my name is Letitia,
Hi, I'm Doug.
and we are the founders of Date Night Ministries. Today, we're going to be sharing a video, a little date talk for you all. We hope that you enjoy it and that you take a lot away from it. This is a video about relationships, marriage, and singleness.
Take a look.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Michael McNeese. You are tuning in to Date Talk, and I hope you guys enjoy the start over.
Hi, my name is Gio McNeese, or Jeanette McNeese, and this is Date Talk. My question was why.
Hi, my name is Joy, and we're here with Date Talk, ready to have some fun.
Hello, Mike. Our first question will be, is marriage relevant in 2018?
Marriage being relevant in 2018 is losing, in my honest opinion, is losing relevancy. With the media, with society, with the TVs and movies and the portrayal of things, marriage life is looked down upon. It's looked at as sort of old-fashioned. It's looked at as two people who sort of settle and become less or become weak than what they potentially could have been if they were alone or single. Oftentimes in movies it's portrayed that way, and a lot of the younger generation just aren't buying into the thought of marriage or being tied up to one person, and that's a huge problem as well. Oftentimes people look at it as being tied up or being bound to one person, which in a sense you are, but it's looked at in a negative light. This young lady right here is who I am bound to. But it's not a thing of I'm sad about it. It's not a thing of like I look at it in a negative way. I choose to be. I'm happy to be. I would rather be bound to this young lady than anybody else. And a lot of people in today's generation just don't look at it in that light.
And Mike, I totally get what you're saying with that. We do see more and more how marriage is kind of being frowned upon, or looking at as a chain and a bondage type of a thing. But I also see a lot of marriages happening in 2018. I see a lot more elaborate weddings, and a lot of people, the weddings are happening, and that's an issue, and that's a concern to me, because a lot of people get excited about the wedding and they don't realize that there's a marriage that's taking place pardon me, with that relationship and with those vows. It's not just about this beautiful wedding day, which a beautiful wedding day could be fun and it could be nice, but no, there's more to it than that. There's a marriage behind it, and that's where I think things get hairy, especially here in America. Like a lot of people are anxious for that wedding day, but they don't understand the work that it takes for a marriage, because again, divorce is a real thing and it's available to us. So a lot of people go in without a full understanding of it, so that affects the relevancy of marriage. A lot of people choose to shack. They'd rather just live together and play house instead of actually making it a solid foundation, and that's the issue, because there aren't very many guarantees with that, because we could play house for 3, 4, 5 years and then I can pack up and leave whenever I feel like it. And that should be an issue. That should be a concern, because you're building something, you're attaching yourself to someone with no real commitment. So you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. A lot of people feel like not getting married will prevent the heartbreak because there's no real tie to this person, but there are ties. There are ties that you don't see. So I believe marriage is relevant, but I do see what you mean about how it's kind of losing its strength or its virtue.
Alrighty, Doug, our next question is for you, and it is, what does two touching and agreeing mean, and how does that relate to marriage?
So that's a good question. I believe that when two people are touching and agreeing on anything, there's a connectivity of something that's about to happen. So there's always the cliche of two heads are better than one. There's two ideas are better than one. There's two empowerments are better than one. And so in marriage, if both parties agree to something, anything's possible. So when we look at agreement always comes up with a plan, and then both parties agree that they will never stop until something gets done. And so when agreement happens, that's the most powerful move that you can ever make in a marriage or in life, period. And so if we come together like a contract and agree on what we're going to do, nothing can stop us.
Okay, Mike, our next question will be back to you, and it is divorce an option for you?
Is divorce an option for me? Absolutely not. The reason why, with marriage, you take your time and pretty much you scout. You scout and you see, is this the person? Is this the person you want to spend the rest of your life with? What flaws do they have? Are these flaws that you will be willing to deal with? And when these flaws come up, is this something that will make you want to end your marriage or not? It's just taking the time to get to know that person, the entirety of that person. I feel like your marriage is symbolic with your relationship with God. And no matter what we do, no matter how flawed we are, God, He never leaves us. And we done some pretty jacked up stuff. And He's always there. And that's what makes Him, that's kind of what even adds more to Him. It's just like, man, you are so magnificent. Because there's so many times I've done things that is complete opposite of magnificent. And you're still there for me. You're not there conditionally. So we should mimic that in our relationships with our spouse, and just show that unconditional love and that unconditional forgiveness and that grace and that mercy towards them, to reflect what God does to us. So when you divorce, you ruin everything.
All right, Ms. Gio, our next question will be for you, and it is, why is there such an adverse view of singles, and why is singleness important?
I feel like with being single, it also sounds like being alone. So people want to have that somebody to say, oh, I'm not by myself, I have somebody. But I think being single is important because it's that time that you have to learn yourself. And if marriage is work, it's going to be work anyway. And I feel like if you go into something not knowing yourself, still learning who you are, and trying to learn this other person, that's added work to it. So I feel like, being single is very important. Learning to love yourself and, just know all about you, what you can and can't tolerate. Because if you don't know that going into something, that's definitely going to be added work, and it's going to be harder in your marriage. And you definitely don't want that because, as my husband said, divorce is not an option. So you don't want to go into something and, learn once you get in there, oh man, I don't know. Because there's always going to be, ups and downs in marriages. And you need to know yourself first.
Okay, I think that was a really good answer. I just want to add to it. I think that being single is important because it shows you who you are. In my time of being single, it showed me in a really harsh way. My good, my bad, my ugly. The things that I can work on, the things that I'm great at, the things that I excel at, the things I'm not so great at. So I think that's an important part of it. And as far as people kind of viewing singles in a weird way, I think that just like with anything, people can get thrown into a group, or they can kind of get stereotyped, and this single person does this. So do all single people do that? Is that the way that all single people think? And I think single people kind of get a bad name from a few bad seeds, but also from media, like Scandal, shows like that kind of show single people as willing to be the side chick or be the side dude or whatever. We get like a bad name or a bad rep for something that somebody created to get somebody's attention.
All right, Miss Letitia, and your question will be, what makes a marriage strong in your opinion?
What makes a marriage strong? Well, that is a loaded question. I feel like what makes a marriage strong is going to differ amongst people, depending on who you are. Me, personally, I'm going to just say from my point of view, like you said, per my opinion, what makes a marriage strong to me is having Christ at the center. I feel like that's what's going to make your marriage strong, because anytime, I use this analogy a lot, but anytime me and my husband can't agree on something, we can agree that Jesus is Lord. Like, that is the one thing that we can come back to. And when he is on my last nerve, I can go to God and tell on him because that's one thing that we have in common. That's our solid ground. That's our firm foundation. So having Christ at the center of your marriage 100% will make your marriage strong. If you are not a believer, I would encourage you to, seek him out, become a believer, because that is going to solidify your marriage. Now, there are other things that you can do. There are couples out there that are not saved that are having, good marriages, but I promise you can't have a great marriage without Christ being the center. That's just my belief from the thousands of couples that I've talked to and the people I've interacted with. Christ being the center of your marriage will keep your marriage. But there are other things. Communication is big. You have to be able to communicate. If you can't communicate, then you might as well hang up the towel already. You have to be able to communicate, and you have to be willing to listen. You also have to be able to compromise. And that's something that a lot of people don't like to hear. The word compromise, we usually think of that as like a put down or a lesser thing or settling, right? But that's not what I mean. When I say compromise, I mean be willing to put the other person before yourself. Be willing to say, you know what, is it really worth it? I know me, I'm a debater. I like to talk. I like to, we could have a debate. And I enjoy it. Hey, guys.
You don't say?
Hate
What?
much. Hate much, Mike. But sometimes you have to say, you know what, is it really worth it? Winning this argument, is it really worth it? Because sometimes the words we say, we can hurt the other person. So is it really worth it for me to be right or for me to win the argument, for me to hurt this person? And a lot of times it's not. Like that's every time it's really not, because when you're married and you're trying to have a strong marriage, that's one of the quickest ways that you can weaken your marriage. When you're trying to win an argument for argument's sake, that's just ignorant. You're going to defeat the purpose. You're destroying your partner. And if you're destroying your partner, you're destroying yourself. That's one thing about it when the Bible says the two come together and now they're one flesh. You are one. So anything you do or say to hurt your spouse, you're really taking a cut out of yourself. I know Joy used that analogy with her teens. You taking a piece of yourself off. Every time you hurt that person, you damaging yourself. It's like giving yourself a black eye. Who does that? So definitely you want to be able to communicate in your marriage. You definitely want to have Christ as the center, and you want to make sure that you compromise, that you have a spirit to be able to know when to compromise, when to back down. There's some things that are tough conversations that you have to have with your spouse. Don't be scared of those tough conversations. You have to have them. But at the same token, don't be scared to kind of back down when it's time to back down. Especially in submission. I attended a wedding and the pastor told the couple, you have to submit one to another. And a lot of people think submission is this bad thing. But no, you want to walk in peace. You want to have a strong marriage. Learn to submit to one another. That's my feedback on, what I think makes a strong marriage. I mean, it's a lot more to it, but in this brief minutes that we have, that's all I'm going to share on it.
In my thoughts on what makes a strong marriage, and to piggyback on what she was saying, is just realizing that you don't want to hurt this other person because this person is a part of you. What I feel makes a strong marriage is realizing that you're a team. Realizing that this is your partner, like this is your teammate.
Team McNeese.
This is your teammate, and have the mindset of it's me and you against the world, so to speak. You got enough obstacles and you got enemies already as is. You don't want to make an enemy amongst yourself, amongst the two of you. And like she said, keeping Christ in your marriage, the three-string cord, and keeping it strong and keeping others out of your marriage, guarding your marriage. That will make your marriage extremely strong by keeping people who nosy or people who don't mean well, who want to get in your marriage, out. If you look around in your marriage and there's 3-4 other people, you need to exterminate and get rid of some folks. It only needs to be 3: you, your spouse, and God. That's it. So keep unnecessary people out, and realizing that you're a team and just working. Have each other's back. Have each other's back. Realizing y'all a team. Have that person's back. That person has your back. And that's what makes a strong marriage.
All right, and I'm going to just hop in there real quick and say this. Another thing, especially, I want to say we as a people too, I feel like us. We don't, I get keeping people out. Like you said, you're supposed to set boundaries. There should be boundaries for your marriage. It should be a clear line. You know, people can only get so far, but also having people that can kind of go past that boundary when necessary. I feel like we don't believe in counseling and things like that. At least we didn't used to. We're getting more open to it now, but not being afraid to go to somebody, because I'm gonna tell the truth, me and my husband, with what we've dealt with in these 15 plus years, there have been people that have actually poured into our marriage, that have spoken into our marriage, that had it not been for them, our marriage may not have succeeded. You know, we were in tough times and we needed that counsel. So like you said, not letting people in your marriage that are naysayers, people that are haters, people that don't mean you any well, not letting them in, but finding a couple, or you know, somebody, more than likely a couple, somebody that you know loves both of you and will pour into you as a couple, not somebody that's gonna be like, oh, he a dog, oh, she trash. No, you want somebody that loves you both and they love you as a unit, and they can pour into you. Yeah, love in Christ is important to you. I always want that godly person, but to be able to have somebody that you can call on when you're dealing with certain issues in marriage, because like she said, marriage is tough. What were you gonna say, Mike? I'm sorry.
And I was gonna say, like, you're absolutely right, and it's a huge difference between a counselor and somebody in your marriage. You know, like, it's a total different thing. A lot of times we'll allow somebody in the marriage and they start guiding, directing the operations and affairs between
Like
you
your
and your
mom.
spouse. But,
Because it's the mother-in-law.
it's a difference between having a counselor. Me and my wife, we did premarital counseling. You know, before we even got married. And pastor ain't in our marriage, first lady ain't in our marriage, but they help give us some tools to help us along the way. Nothing wrong with that. We just don't want to let nobody in where they affecting the operations and what you guys got going.
That's dope. No, I was just saying that was dope. That was good.
All right, our next question is to you, Miss Joy, and it is it hard to date as a Christian in 2018?
Yes, it is hard to date as a Christian in 2018, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Not all Christians, how do I say this nicely? Not all Christians practice their faith as everyone else does. Some Christians are okay with having sex before marriage. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying some people do.
What type of Christians are those?
Right.
Questions that need answers. Some Christians are okay. Everybody has different standards. And it's hard to find somebody who is equal or higher than you, because you don't want to find somebody that's on a different level than you spiritually. And that's just my opinion. There are certain people that even if they're Christian, I don't know if I can date them. You can't support me the way that I need to be supported spiritually. Another part of dating, not even just being a Christian, but just in general, the dating pool is like this big. Like, when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, people are starting to get paired off really fast. You see a lot of weddings, like Tisha said earlier, you see a lot of weddings happening. So people are getting married at a rapid pace now. Or people have a ton of kids now, or they're not looking to be married, or they're not looking to date. The list goes on and on. So it's very hard to date and to find somebody that holds your attention. When you get to be a certain age and you're single, that's your life, you know, and you find other things to kind of fill those spaces. So now, you know, if you start dating, now you got to move some other stuff around. I don't have as much time to do X, Y, Z because now I have a mate or a partner to tend to, things like that. So it's definitely not easy. Not impossible, but not easy. Anybody want to add to that?
All right. To expound upon what you just said, I do think that it's very hard to date as a Christian in 2018. I mean, like, I'm a young man, and like, no, I'm just being honest, okay? There are things out there that I just like, that I just want to do, like, like things that I necessarily should not do. Like, I should not be doing that. I should not go out and do this and that. So,
Like threesomes?
oh my gosh!
Oh
Wow!
my God.
Wow!
Wow.
About that random
She
question.
went there.
Right.
Talking about being single.
This is date talk.
Right.
So I'm just trying to
She
understand,
clearly
what would you-
jumped out of
What is
bounds.
it that you mean? I'm honestly want to know.
Well, yeah, like sexual activities, okay? Me and my girlfriend, we have decided that we are going to wait until we are actually married, until we start to, you know, do that type of stuff.
Thank you, Jesus.
But I'm saying it's still tempting. Like there's always gonna be that, like, oh, like, okay, nobody's home. Like what's, like, you know, there's is gonna be temptations and everything. So of course it's gonna be hard to date as a Christian in 2018, and also with like everything that, like, you see your friends doing something and it's just like, oh well, they're over there doing this and they're doing this, so why can't I, you know, do it too? And then you see things on social media and like different shows, like Miss Joy said also. So it's like, it's just a lot of temptation around dating, and it's like sex appeal, and that's what tends to attract the people to date. Yeah.
I want to add something to that. Temptation is definitely a huge part of it, because, you know, just because you're saved, just because you're a Christian, doesn't make you less human. You still have the same hormones, feelings, desires as everybody else. Another part to add to that is comparison. The older you get, and I'm sure teenagers and younger people go through it too, but like the older you get, you see all of these people getting married, getting into relationships, and you kind of looking like, okay, what's my issue? Why can't I seem to find this right person? So then it becomes like this slippery slope of comparing yourself to other people in the hopes of becoming what someone would choose to be a wife or a husband or whatever. So I think that's a huge part too.
I think that's a big issue in general too. That's why, again, spiritually, the Bible tells us not to compare ourselves to one another, because that can be an issue even in your marriage. If you looking at old girl husband and you looking at your husband and you like, man, I should have got that model. You know what I mean? Like, that can be an issue when you start trying to compare to what everybody else is doing. So I definitely get that. I went through that with my education. You know, I joined the service right out of high school, and a lot of my friends went to college right out of high school, and now here they are with master's degrees. I'm sitting here with a bachelor's degree, like, dang, I messed up, you know what I mean, or whatever the case may be. But we do a lot of comparisons, so I can see how that could be a challenge, especially, you know, with the people around you, your peers and the different ones around you. I'm not dating in 2018. I'm grateful for that, but I definitely could understand the challenges that you guys face dating in 2018. That's why I appreciate things like this, like our table talk, and being able to just, you know, have a date chat and talk about different issues and different things to know. Number one, you're not the only person dealing with this stuff. Number two, to know, you know, see how somebody else is handling it, or what somebody else's thoughts are on it. Like you and your girlfriend choosing to wait until you're married. That's really dope, especially for somebody so young. And somebody might be watching this and thinking, dang, maybe, you know, maybe that's an option for us. Because a lot of times the issue is the lack of options. We think this is the only way to go. If everybody I know is out here doing X, then it must be X. But when somebody introduces Y, they can make a big change in somebody's life. So that's really dope. I hope you guys enjoyed this date talk that we've had, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.